When you think of castles, your imagination probably takes you across the Atlantic, to medieval fortresses in Scotland, fairy tale chateaux in France, or the stone strongholds perched on Italy's hills. Castles feel European by nature, reminders of knights, kings, and ancient dynasties. But here's the surprise. America has castles too. They may not be centuries old, but they carry stories just as grand, romantic, and mysterious. From the sweeping French-style mansion of the Vanderbilts, to a Hollywood tycoon's coastal dream palace, to a love story carved in stone on a New York island. These are places where history, wealth, ambition, and imagination collide. In this journey, we'll uncover 5 of the most extraordinary castles in the United States, each one proof that America's story is not just written in skyscrapers and steel, but also in towers, turrets, and timeless dreams. And before we begin, if you love history told through the landmarks that shaped it, make sure to subscribe to the America We Knew. Because here, we don't just talk about the past, we bring it back to life, one forgotten story at a time. Biltmore Estate, America's French chateau. Tucked away in the rolling hills of Asheville, North Carolina, stands a home so grand, so vast, that it still holds the title of the largest private residence in the United States. The Biltmore Estate, completed in 1895, is America's answer to a French chateau, a mansion of more than 178,000 square feet, built not as a fortress of defense, but as a monument to wealth, culture, and ambition. It was the vision of George Washington Vanderbilt II, heir to one of the richest families of the Gilded Age. Inspired by the grand chateaux of the Loire Valley in France, Vanderbilt spared no expense. He brought in renowned architect Richard Morris Hunt and famed landscape designer Frederick Law Olmsted, the man behind Central Park, to create not just a house, but an entire experience. The result was breathtaking. 250 rooms, a banquet hall with a 70-foot ceiling, a library filled with more than 20,000 volumes, indoor gardens, and sprawling grounds that seemed endless. The Biltmore wasn't just a display of money, it was a statement. It told the world that America, still young compared to Europe, could build monuments of elegance to rival the old world. Now imagine the very first Christmas inside this palace. A massive tree towering in the banquet hall, glittering with candles and ornaments. The sound of a string quartet echoing through the stone halls. The Vanderbilt family welcoming guests with lavish feasts, fine wine, and laughter that carried through the corridors. For many, it must have felt like stepping into a fairy tale, but it was real, and it was right here in North Carolina. Today, the Biltmore remains a living time capsule of the Gilded Age, a glimpse into an era when wealth and artistry collided to create something truly unforgettable. Visitors walk through its halls not just to see a mansion, but to feel the grandeur of a moment in history when America dreamed bigger than ever before. Hearst Castle, a Hollywood dream in stone. High above the California coast, on a hilltop overlooking the Pacific, stands a palace that seems ripped from a Mediterranean dream. This is Hearst Castle, the creation of publishing tycoon William Randolph Hearst and his trailblazing architect, Julia Morgan. From 1919 to 1947, they transformed raw hills into a dazzling estate of terraces, gardens, and opulent halls, a place where wealth and imagination collided in stone. Hearst was not a man who thought small. With Julia Morgan at the helm, one of the first great female architects in America, he designed a home that rivaled Europe's finest. The castle's crown jewels were its pools, the indoor Roman pool, shimmering in deep blue tiles of gold leaf, and the legendary Neptune pool, a sparkling masterpiece framed by marble columns, statues, and sunlight. It wasn't just a swimming pool. It was theater, glamour, and excess all at once. But the real magic of Hearst Castle wasn't in its architecture alone. It was in its guest list. During the 1920s and 30s, the estate became the ultimate Hollywood playground. Imagine a weekend evening. Charlie Chaplin walking the terrace, Clark Gable trading stories in the dining hall, Cary Grant laughing poolside. Politicians, movie stars, and moguls mingled in a surreal atmosphere where California sunsets blended with old-world luxury. Every party was a spectacle, every visit a headline. Yet today, Hearst Castle stands not as a private mansion, but as a national historic landmark. Its gates are open to the public, inviting visitors to step into the golden age of Hollywood and the gilded age of American media power. Walking through its halls, you can almost hear the echo of music, laughter, and the clink of champagne glasses, reminders of an era when Hearst's empire of words and influence built not just newspapers, but dreams in stone. Boldt Castle, a monument to love. On a small island in the St. Lawrence River, surrounded by the calm waters of the Thousand Islands, stands one of America's most romantic and tragic castles. Boldt Castle, begun in the early 1900s, was not built as a fortress of power or a showpiece of wealth, but as a love letter in stone. George Boldt, a millionaire hotel magnate known for running New York's famed Waldorf Astoria, envisioned the castle as a gift for his beloved wife, Louise. Inspired by European fairy tale architecture, he hired hundreds of workers to transform Hart Island into a dreamscape. Towers, gardens, archways, and a grand residence that would rival anything across the Atlantic. It was to be a private paradise, a symbol of devotion set in stone. But in 1904, tragedy struck. Louise Boldt died suddenly, and George was devastated. With his heart broken, he ordered all construction to stop immediately. The workmen laid down their tools and left the castle unfinished. For decades, Boldt Castle stood silent, incomplete, a haunting monument to a love story cut short. It wasn't until many years later that efforts began to restore the estate. Today, Boldt Castle has been carefully preserved and open to the public. Visitors wander its grand halls, its restored gardens, and its picturesque towers, all while feeling the weight of the story that lingers in its walls. To stand at Boldt Castle is to feel both wonder and sorrow, wonder at its beauty, and sorrow at the thought of what it was meant to be. It is proof that even the wealthiest man cannot escape the fragility of life, and that sometimes the most powerful castles are not the ones completed, but the ones that forever carry the memory of love. Bannerman's Castle, the fortress of mysteries. Sailing up the Hudson River, just north of New York City, there's a sight that seems almost unreal. Rising from the water on a small island, the ruins of a crumbling fortress appear, turrets, walls, and arches silhouetted against the sky. This is Bannerman's Castle, a place as strange as it is haunting. The castle was the vision of Francis Bannerman VI, a Scottish immigrant who made his fortune buying and selling military surplus. By the early 1900s, his business empire was so vast that he needed a safe place to store the weapons, cannons, and munitions he traded. His answer was bold: build a fortress on Polypel Island in the style of a Scottish castle, a reminder of his heritage and a striking advertisement for his trade. Across its walls, the words Bannerman's Island Arsenal were painted in massive letters, visible to anyone traveling the Hudson. But this was no romantic palace. It was a warehouse disguised as a fortress, filled with gunpowder and weapons. Fires, accidents, and eventually an explosion in 1920 scarred the castle, leaving it partially in ruins. Over the decades, time and neglect took their toll, until Bannerman's Castle became more ruin than structure, a skeletal reminder of ambition, risk, and decay. And yet, that ruin became its allure. Today, visitors cruising along the Hudson glimpse its ghostly silhouette from the deck of a boat. Against the backdrop of the river and the forested hills, the castle looks both majestic and eerie, a place suspended between history and legend. Some describe it as a haunted relic, others as a forgotten fairy tale turned to ash. Standing there, you can almost picture it in its heyday. Barrels of gunpowder stacked inside, workers moving crates of rifles, Bannerman himself overseeing the arsenal. And then, just as quickly, you're left with the silence of broken walls and ivy creeping over stone. Bannerman's Castle is no longer a fortress of war. It is a fortress of memory, mystery, and the kind of haunting beauty only ruins can hold. Castello di Amorosa, a taste of Italy in the heart of California. In the heart of Napa Valley, where rolling vineyards meet the California sun, rises a castle that feels as if it were plucked straight from Tuscan. This is Castello di Amorosa, a modern creation built in the 20th century, yet designed with painstaking detail to capture the soul of medieval Italy. The dream belonged to Dario Satui, a winemaker with deep Italian roots. Determined to blend architecture and culture, He spent years constructing the castle stone by stone, complete with guard towers, courtyards, a chapel, and even underground wine cellars that echo with history. Walking through its gates, you'd never guess it was built in our own time. Every brick, every arch, every fresco feels like it has stood for centuries. But Castello di Amorosa isn't just for admiration, it's for experience. Picture a golden afternoon, guests raising glasses of ruby red wine in the courtyard, laughter mingling with the music of a live violin, sunlight spilling across the battlements. In those moments, you don't feel like you're in California. You feel transported to a rustic Italian dream, where tradition, craftsmanship, and passion come alive. Castello di Amorosa proves that America's castles are not mere imitations of Europe. They are reflections of American ambition, imagination, and the desire to weave old-world beauty into new-world possibility. And so, as we look back at these 5 remarkable castles, from Biltmore's grandeur to Hearst's Hollywood opulence, to Boldt's unfinished love story, Bannerman's haunting ruins, and Amorosa's living Italian fantasy, we see more than architecture. We see the American story itself, one of vision, resilience, romance, and the pursuit of dreams. Which of these castles would you love to explore first? Let us know in the comments below. And if you've enjoyed this journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the America We Knew, where we bring history back to life through the landmarks, legends, and stories that shaped a nation.